Hello, everybody. Welcome to IST 110. I'm, of course, Professor S, and this is today's lecture. Anyways, I wanted to go over some COVID stuff real quick. Then we'll talk about the group project. And then I'll lecture on information. And then what I did at the end of the lecture is that I talked to people about the Tiny Project presentation. Since this is a recording, I'm not going to talk to people about Tiny Project presentation, so I cut this slide out. All right, anyways, just as a reminder, this is the COVID stuff. This is about a year into the pandemic from Penn State. Now, I know this is 110, so some of you are new this semester, but a lot of the lockdown happened about a year ago. And just, I wanted to communicate, we're all feeling it. Like students, I'm definitely feeling it. I don't know how much you guys interact with each other, but I interact with some of you through email and stuff like that, and I'm telling you, a lot of you are feeling it. And so I just, for those of you that I don't know what you're going through and that sort of thing, just to communicate, I have office hours, so if you need to talk to me about anything, you can come do that. The link for the office hours is in the top of the modules page, or it's a link in the syllabus. Also, I offer a COVID modifier for assignments. So if you're affected by the pandemic in some way, whether it's directly like you're getting, you have the coronavirus, or indirectly like there's some sort of family emergency that's kind of tied to the coronavirus, I get it. Just let me know and I'll adapt. Just let me know. If I have not given this to you, it's because it was not communicated that it was something sort of related to the pandemic. It was, maybe I missed that detail that it just sounds like it was normal. You forgot or something like that. And if that's the case, I'm sorry. I'm just going off of the information that I have. If you want more information about that, it's in the syllabus. Okay? Anyways, let's talk about the group project. So starting now, like when this opened up, the next deliverable was available for the group project, the references. The idea is each person in your group needs to come up with 3 references, should contribute to the idea is like each one of these things should contribute to the final assignment. Or it should be thought to be come up with the final assignment. I don't want you to just come up with references and like, this is something. The idea is like you want, the goal is to try to help you come up with or start working on your presentation or start working on your project with your stuff that you need. Anyways, so it needs to be something that you intend to use, but it doesn't actually need to be something that you do use. Like maybe you're just like, all right, you know what? This looks like this has a lot of useful information. I'm going to use this. And then you find out when you're putting together, you know what? I don't really need that, so I'm going to cut that out. Okay? So it doesn't need to actually be in the final product, but the idea is like we need to see something that looks like it could be, right? Also need to include like a brief description of how you think that will help your the project. Okay? The thing also is that it needs to be APA format. Or the final paper is going to be APA format, so the references should be APA format. So that means you need to have title it references. Don't call it bibliography. Don't call it a works cited. It's a reference page. This should be your APA format for the final product should be double space. References isn't double spaced. There might be spacing in between each of the entries, but that's about it. This need for APA is going for the different things that I'm looking for the assignment itself. I'm not super strict with APA format, but it needs to be like someone needs to look at it and say, okay, that's APA. So like, what am I talking about? So double space, the citation in-text citations need to be there. So just having references at the end of the page, at end of the document is just not enough. I need to see where you're using that information. Like just having it in your paper and saying like, yeah, it was somewhere in the paper. That's not good enough. I need to know where you're pulling it from. So just make sure you have in-text citations. And those in-text citations need to be APA style. And there's a website that you can use to do that. I'm just saying what I'm looking for. And then reference page, it's going to have the references, and then those references need to be in alphabetical order on that reference page. Okay. I think that should cover it. So the group project, again, or the deliverable that's due before class on Monday will be the references. Everything needs to be alphabetical, and you also need a description next to each one describing how it was useful. On the final product, you're not going to have the description, but yeah, we'll talk more about things that I'm looking for in the final product later. But for now, this is what we're looking for the group project, and I'll give you time on Wednesday to work on it. Okay. All right. So what we're doing in this class is information systems, an introduction to it. And when we're talking about information systems, there's like three main parts: it's technology, people, and processes, methods, right? And so when we're dealing with methods, we're usually dealing with all three of these together. These three things have to work together to make a system, information system work. Okay. Technology, think about that like the actual devices. That's the physical network. That's the computers. That's the storage devices, all that stuff. That is the technology. People is the people that use it, and and that sort of thing. And methods is the process of getting stuff done. Okay. We'll go over I might not cite specifically, well, this is the methods, this is the people, this is technology in each one of these systems, but each one of these systems has each one of these things involved in it. Starting with system-based integration systems. All right, so anyways, so some of these things are still around, but a lot of this is things that are that have kind of developed over time, and the latter is going to be more prevalent than the earlier because of accessibility and how things work. So we'll get into that. All right. So anyways, first one is material requirements planning, MRP 1, or just MRP, right? So the idea behind this is this was using computing technology to organize company manufacturing resources. So companies would manufacture things, and they needed software to keep track of how much they needed for the different processes, right? So for making something back then people weren't making this pen, but the different things were required were the plastic for making these things, the metal for the outside, the different things inside it. So it's not just the items needed to make this, but it's also the things to help run the machines and the people that made them. Keeping track of oil maybe that would be needed for the machines to help it keep running, maybe keeping track of excess, that sort of thing, keeping track of the different materials and things needed for the manufacturing process, the resources, excuse me, would be a better way to put it. In the 80s, there was the MRP2, which is manufacturing resource planning software became available. And some of this is still available now. It's just depending upon what a company needs. But the idea behind this came next, but the idea behind this was that it managed the people and the resources through the manufacturing and shipping process. So it included shipping and included some of the management of people, thinking about timing that people did. It could have taken advantage of the client-server relationship where you had a server, a central computer, and people had their a mainframe available, and then people had their terminals connected to it, that sort of thing. And it allowed for planning, scheduling, forecasting, analyzing, all those different things that were needed for improving. So just keeping track of resources for manufacturing just wasn't enough. They needed to keep track of the time that people did, because there's different areas that needed different people specialized in. There's people that need to focus on this thing and it takes them longer, so it needs to organize these different things better. So the idea is this is a much more complex software. And then also a little later there was the enterprise resource planning, which came in the late 80s. Think about this as being doing everything in real time. And as software has developed, how computing has developed, cloud computing has developed, this is becoming more and more accessible to smaller companies. So the idea with this enterprise resource planning ERP stuff is that it is putting a lot of the computing for the company into one central service, right? So thinking about the finance needed, thinking about managing accounts, like accounts receivable, accounts paid, all those different things that require different attention. And people could, like, you'd have accountants could use into that and like work with that. You could also have supply chain, thinking about like where the distribution of the different products are going to go, the manufacturing, like what the different resources are needed. So it's like it's centralizing all these different processes into one system, which is still really big. And so there's enterprise systems that could be developed specifically for huge companies such as GE, Procter & Gamble, those sorts of things. But then there's also enterprise ERPs that are available for smaller companies to kind of take advantage of to run their companies. And so the idea is it's like it takes into account all these different things, the track the business, all the business activities in real time. All right, anyways. Another system that is incredibly important to businesses is the office support systems. So think about like Microsoft Office. That's like a typical example, I think. And so this is something that, for me, I think it's kind of easy to overlook. But it's something that's definitely important, and it's definitely a information system because it's providing the technology would be the computers and the software for people to use to write documents, to send memos, to store calculations, all these different things. And then it's also the processes to keep track of how they're doing these sort of things. It's providing email between people, so it's helping the communications and that sort of thing. Another information system is TPS, Transaction Processing Systems. This links multiple operations together, ensures all operations and transactions completed without error. Funny thing about working with clients and money is that they don't really want you to make a mistake with their money. Likewise, with companies, when it's dealing with selling products and dealing with those sort of things, it's like you don't want to make a mistake with handling money when you're exchanging it from other people. So a lot of this has to be on point. Okay, so for the system to work, you need to perform kind of an acid test, and so this kind of works into the system. So it has to be, A is for atomicity. I can't speak, but the idea is it's like transactions happen or it doesn't, right? You don't want this vagueness with the transactions. You want to make sure, one, you get your money, and you don't want clients to be like, well, am I paying or not? It's either paid or it doesn't, right? So that's happening. Another thing is consistency. It's always following the rules. Okay, you have these processes, and it's always doing the money. It's not. Sometimes it's not. It's got to have that sort of reliability. Another thing is isolation. So each of the transactions happens independently from another. So you're not accidentally pulling from somebody else's account. It's like thinking about this specific instance. Okay. And then durability, that once a transaction is completed, it can't be undone. This is ideal so that kind of for the first one where you kind of know that it's done. Okay. So an example of this is the Square POS system. So like companies like a lot of restaurants, a lot of stores, they have the software service that they get where they use Square, which is like you usually can tell because it has like a white screen, or like it's definitely a white box that you shove your credit card in or stuff like that. And like if you think about that service specifically with the credit card, you shove your credit card in, you need to make sure like you're not charging somebody else's, like the company needs to make sure that they're not charging somebody's account for somebody else's purchases. Transaction needs to happen so that the store or restaurant gets their money. It's like all these things have to make sure that they happen. Okay. Another thing to kind of mention is the software development lifecycle. This is how programs can be developed. So the idea is like for this first, you need to do, taking a step back. The idea with this is like this system is implemented in maybe in slightly different ways in different companies, but the basics are here. Like I've seen this in this system, this cycle represented maybe with some other steps in there, but really what it's doing is it might be breaking apart some steps or blending some steps together. So it's roughly about the same thing. And let's kind of talk about what this is. So first step is analysis. So determining the goal. So it's like, all right, what do we need to make sure that this thing can do? Okay. What do we need this software to happen? And then next thing is design. How is this going to look? How are things going to flow? That sort of thing. And then there's implementation. And this is where things build. And so that could be where it's coded and that sort of thing. And then there's the testing, and that's where it checks for bugs and see if how everything's doing. And if this is kind of like this is a cycle, and so then what could happen is like after the testing, then it's like then maybe the things learned from the testing goes into the analysis and thinking about like, all right, where are our goals now? Do we change them? And then you keep going through this process. Okay, so one of the ways that this could work is the waterfall method. So the idea with this is like you're still going through each one of these different phases, but you're completing them as you go along, right? So once you're done with the analysis, then you go to design. Once you finish design, you go to implementations, and then once you finish implementations, you go to testing. Okay, you don't say during the analysis you go on to designs. It's once you finish that one, you move on to the next one. Spiral takes that waterfall and maybe goes to the next level. And so what they could do with this is they kind of get more details as they go along through each iteration of the cycle. So it's like maybe comes up with a broad scope of the software, how we're going to design it, and think about the infrastructure and that sort of thing, and then thinking about like the next iteration they come up with details and that sort of thing. But this idea is like it's still once you finish one thing you could move to the next thing, and so then it like kind of cycles it. But the idea is like each time with the spiral it gets more and more thorough. And like I said, sometimes this analysis is broken up. So planning and analysis could be kind of broken up. So there's like a thinking about what's needed and then how are we going to do this. Okay. And then maybe there's debugging that's part of the testing, or maybe it's something considered different. Maybe the testing is the alpha and beta testing. But it depends upon the company, depends upon what they need for the planning process. Thinking about debugging, we need to think about errors. For this class, we're going to focus on 2 errors. Like there's a bunch of different errors that we could come up with, and some of them there's like some overlap. But we're going to think about these 2 distinct ones, right? So a syntax error, runtime error, there's no overlap. Okay. Syntax error, these are instructions with the programming language that violate the programming language, right? So maybe it causes the system to crash. And so instead of doing like if-else statements, you do if statements, and it just doesn't know what to do with it, and it just crashes. Usually when you're running a compiler, it can usually find these syntax errors and identify them. Usually, like the syntax errors is something that happens more with novice programmers, people learning how to program for the first time. And it's also something that IDEs can help with. IDEs are the software that is often used for interacting with the programming language, because you're not just programming with the language. There's IDEs that help. It's the software that you use to interact with the programming language. Just something separate. But anyways, another thing is the runtime error. So runtime error is a instruction that follows the rules of the language. So it's not a syntax error, but it still causes some issues. Like for instance, it could cause the program to crash. Maybe it does an incorrect calculation, or it loops indefinitely, right? So some examples. So say you have something that maybe somebody enters in something and it just causes a computer to crash. Calculate it incorrectly, so you're supposed to add things together and it actually multiplies together and then loops indefinitely. Like you made something so that a loop that's supposed to go on for 5 times actually ends up going forever, and so the program doesn't end when it's supposed to. Typically though, runtime errors are considered bugs, and so these are things that people look for in the debugging process to fix. Now there's other like subsets for runtime errors, but we're not getting into it. We're just blanket or umbrella term runtime errors. Okay. The last thing that I'm talking about is this pyramid. And it's a struggle for me because a lot of these things are kind of synonymous, like information and data. But when we think about this hierarchy, they're not the same thing. So for instance, let's start from the very beginning. The raw stuff is data. So data is raw measurements. It's like if we're thinking about like the information for a company, it could be the amount of things sold of a product, right? It could be the price of the product, all those different things. That's things that are measured. The next thing is the information. This provides context. So this is the things that are kind of calculated from the data sort of thing is maybe a good rule of thumb. So like the profit that was determined from from selling a product. It's the margins. It's these different calculations. The knowledge. This is things that adds experience. It's observing trends and that sort of thing. So it's like if we have so if something is selling, it's like this thing is selling a lot of this. So this is like seems to be growing in appreciation. So like this item that is sold, we keep selling more and more of it. Okay, so we're like noticing that there's upwards trends of it being used. Wisdom is about acting on the knowledge. So wisdom is saying, all right, so we're selling more and more of these things. We need to make sure we make more of this thing. We need to make sure we have more of these available to meet the supply, so we can take advantage of the demand. Okay, and that's basically how this thing works. Okay. Anyways, that's what we talked about in class today. Hope you got a lot out of it. I'll see you all Wednesday. Hey everyone, I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please press the like button. It lets me know I'm doing something right. If you have any questions about any of the content, please send an email through Canvas to both me and the rest of the teaching team, and we will get back to you as soon as possible. Do not send it through normal email. You will not get as fast response. If you have any suggestions for how I can make these videos better, please leave in the comments below. Don't forget to roundhouse kick the subscribe button and ring the bell to get notified from when I post the next video. Anyway, I think that's good for now, and I will see you all next class.